Welcome to the Startup Grind.
I'm from Bangalore, and I've always lived in Bangalore most of my life. Apart from my engineering education happened at Surathkal, NIT Surathkal. Graduated from there in 2003, and post that went to work with Infosys for about 3 years, and post Infosys, of course, thought that I'll do an MBA, and IIM Ahmedabad is where I got into. And 2008, joined a company called Jones Lang LaSalle. It's a real estate consultancy firm, and I was heading business development there for a couple of years. And that's when me and Raghu, who was my batchmate from engineering, so both of us got together, discussed a few ideas, decided that taxi aggregation is the one that we thought we could quit our jobs to get into, so started that.
So who has been your greatest inspiration to start up something? Was it there already when you were doing engineering or your post-graduation?
So maybe it comes as a surprise, but whether it was engineering or MBA, throughout my education, I don't think I've ever thought of starting a company, right? And real life experiences kind of come as an inspiration for me. Real life experiences in terms of, especially while working with Jones Lang LaSalle, where I used to head business development. I was responsible to get in the kind of business that Jones Lang LaSalle was doing. But to do that, I was interacting a lot with all the business heads who used to run their respective verticals, and saw how they would be able to manage the whole setup, get enough resources in, provide some kind of a service to the end client. The client saw some value in what service was being provided, and hence paid up a certain amount of money. Out of that, there was enough income to also make profits. So this whole understanding in the real world actually helped. Through MBA education, although we get really rigorously trained to understand different aspects of the business, I think when you see it happening live, and you get exposed to running it, is when there's a lot of confidence that's set. At least for me, it set in. And the whole question was, if I'm going to be spending 12 to 14 hours a day, working, why not try and do it for myself? Why not go and solve a problem that lots of people are, probably facing every day? So that's basically how Taxi For Sure as an idea also conceptualized. When me and Raghu were talking, we asked ourselves one question of what is the one problem that the world or the present city is facing. So getting from one point to another for a person who commuted a lot was a problem. As in either you have to drive or rely on public transport, which wasn't very convenient, or get a taxi which wasn't too available. This was 4 years ago. Even now we face a lot of problems getting taxis. We are trying to innovate on that. But I think the inspiration is real world problems, right? And as soon as you identify it and you can actually solve it in such a way that people will pay for it, right? I think that's when you really hit on to a really good startup idea, right? Real world problem can be converted into a startup.
How were the initial days at Taxi For Sure? I mean, like I said, you have changed the lives of many people at some point of time. Like I was telling you my example as well, like I'm the most satisfied customer of the year. So how was it from the day one? Be it working with Raghunandan as a co-partner, because he was your friend, you said earlier. Setting up the initial team, starting with the first customer. So how were the initial days at DFS?
Yeah, so initially it was just me and Raghu. If I have to take you guys through the journey, the idea was, so I don't know how many of you are familiar with Bangalore, but there's a pub called Old Tavern on Museum Road, right? So that's where we got really drunk one night, and we were discussing problems, and getting a taxi was a problem. And we wrote down on a sheet of, the tissue paper that they had on how, all of the city's taxis can be viewed in one map, right? And then you pick and choose which one you want. So that's how we wrote it. The next morning we still remembered the idea. Basically, told ourselves that, since we remember it, why don't we do some research? We did some research, found out that nobody was doing it. Across the world, nobody was doing it. There was no mention of Uber then, there was no mention of anybody else then. So it seemed like a very nice, novel idea that can really help people every day. That's how we started off. And we spoke to a lot of consumers, we spoke to the drivers, we spoke to operators, we spoke to all these three stakeholders, and found that everybody had a problem. The driver was having a problem finding business wherever he was. So hence, he would sit at home, he would be affiliated to one neighborhood tours and travels guy. If somebody called that operator to go to the railway station, they would charge double, because they would go, drop and come back, right? So let's say, for example, they would charge 500 rupees, but they would do like 1 or 2 trips of those 500 rupees every day and earn about 1,000 rupees. But they didn't have continuous access to customers, right? That means not much money, and that was the driver's pain point, right? The operator's pain point was, so I have, let's say I have a small little tours and travels, car tours and travels company in Koramangala. I don't have the wherewithal to go do marketing across Koramangala. The maximum I would do is put some no parking boards in a couple of roads here and there, and then try and get a Just Dial listing for Koramangala, and that was my source of getting calls. So I would get, let's say, 20 calls a day, convert 10 calls, provide service to those 10 calls, and hence the earning was also not too much, right? Consumers now had to, before call Just Dial, get a list of local taxi operators. All of them would call. It's kind of bugging, and you would never know whether they've registered your call, they would come, they would not come, all those things. So there were pain points everywhere. So we thought, since all three stakeholders whom we're going to influence are having a problem, this is probably a good value add to all of us, right? So, and then we, made a small business plan. We had access to Deep Kalra, who's the founder of Make My Trip. Went and told him about the idea. He was gung-ho about it and said, you guys should try out and build this. That gave us a lot of confidence to actually quit our jobs and start. So the research, the kind of vetting that we got from a person who's already done something, made us quit our jobs, right? And post that, it took us about, this was November, December 2010. It took us about 6-7 months from there on to actually get live. Get live meaning getting the website up and running, right? And it was a set of freelancers plus. Finally we got somebody full-time on board as our first employee. His name is Ashok, he's still around with us. So he helped us build the first few versions of our website and the backend. Right. So actually, when we launched, the backend was just an Excel sheet. So we would get calls on one side. The database started with an Excel sheet. Excel was the database. So we would get and we also had some questions regarding should we focus on the kind of look and feel of the website from day one? Should we have a number that is memorable from day one? So all of these things was on our minds, and we went into advice from different people. Everybody said have a good website, have a memorable number, it will all help. So a lot of things happened by serendipity for us. Whether it was meeting Deep, whether it was getting Ashok as our first employee, whether it was getting our number 60, 60, 10, 10. So I used to go and meet a lot of local operators. One of these local operators was Metro Taxi, and his office was a small little room on top of a building, and there was a car downstairs which had the number 60, 60, 50, 50. And I was like, this guy who has such a small office can get a nice number. There must be some way to it. So I went and asked him. He gave me a contact. He was nice enough to give me that contact, and when contacted, that guy gave some options of numbers, and 60, 60, 10 that happened. So all of these were initial days, and initial days we also had a very small room, 150 square feet, on top of a residential building in JP Nagar, second phase. So I think when we started off, we just wanted to solve the pain point of getting a taxi for how many ever consumers that we could. Neither me or Raghu thought we would be doing 30,000 transactions a day right now across 23 cities. So you learn as you go.
As a startup person, you have been there and along with Raghunandan. Now you have been considered as a successful entrepreneur. So what were the early mistakes any startup guys would do in general, and any typical examples of that? That's for sure.
So in the question, right, you said successful entrepreneur. I think we've not yet reached there. Yeah. So hopefully we will be successful, but. So far so good, everything's worked out fine. Some mistakes. So we used to be very guarded about our idea in the beginning. So whenever we went and spoke to people, whether it was a potential investor or somebody else, we would not tell them what exactly we were trying to do. I think that was one of the things that we could have avoided. Probably we could have gone faster. By sharing, because people are generally not there to steal your idea and just run with it and do their own startup, right? Each person has their own set things that they're doing in their personal life, their professional life, and all those things. So I think the more the inputs you get, it's extreme common sense, especially for a B2C kind of a company that you start, because taxi. So wherever I go, I get feedback. Right? Whether I want it or not, people will give me feedback about taxi for sure. As a founder of a B2C company, you just have to take that feedback, learn continuously, and go get better, right? So there is a lot that we still need to do. We're not perfect even today, but the pain point is so painful today in the market that despite a few flaws here and there, people still want to use taxi for sure to the extent that they are right now. So yeah.
So you have started with an idea and then started with one employee and then more than 1,000 employees now.
Yeah.
So how do you ensure that you implement certain process and everyone sticks to it? And generally, my question is to understand how do you generally implement some processes and how do you make sure that everyone follows them.
See, processes for a startup is we don't call ourselves a startup anymore actually. So we're 1,200 people across India. So it is difficult when you scale, right? But what we try and do is give everybody the objective that we are trying to achieve, right? So let's say the objective is send every cab on time, right? So how Bangalore would do it, plus how Delhi would do it, how Chennai would do it, or Hyderabad would do it, to a certain extent to make sure that cabs go on time. And then there's some feedback on that process as well. And then you get better and better as a process, right? In the end, what is helping all of us to implement this process? It's not about writing down this is the way you should do it and giving it, but making everybody understand the objective of what we're trying to do. So all of us have a streak of innovation, creativity in us. If you're just given, and everybody with Taxi Bashar at least is a person who wants to work with a startup. Why do they want to work with a startup? Because they get some amount of independence, some amount of freedom to show their creativity. So a process is necessary to get the alignment of the thought right. But what is more important is the objective. Send every cab on time. And why is it important to send every cab on time? So the understanding of that with everybody helps us drive the kind of processes that we would define.
We spoke about the creativity and the innovation in the organization. How is it being taken care of teams? What are the innovative solutions have been given to the customer, the partners you have, the employees?
So our whole business model itself is innovative. So we're slightly different, although we're aggregators and pitched against our nearest competition, which is Ola and Uber. But our supply side model is slightly different. So we work with local operators. We don't work with direct driver owners as such. So why do we do that? Because the local operators are the guys who basically have access to all the driver owners individually in their neighborhood. We've also seen that we've been able to scale faster than everybody else in terms of number of cars that are in the network of Taxi for sure. Right? So that is an innovation, right? So that has helped us scale a lot faster. We are in 23 cities. We are the largest, as in we're in the most number of cities amongst all the aggregators today in India. And that is an innovation to add cars, right? We have an initiative called TFS Labs, which keeps working on different ideas. One of the first ideas that was implemented through TFS Labs was our recent launch of the Nano. So that's an innovation. That's the first time anybody's done it in a big scale in India, right? So I'll share with you the thought process that went behind it, because innovation is not just being creative and innovative. It is also about solving the right problem, right? Just because it's creative and innovative, you can't just implement something. So what we were facing was that there were a lot of people who wanted to buy cars, but the cost of buying a car, whether it's the down payment or the EMI, was higher for an Indica, a sedan, and Innova and all those cars. So when we started speaking to them, they did express that if it was 20,000 rupees cheaper in terms of a down payment, if it was lesser in terms of EMI, I could have bought a car. Right? So, was there an option? Yes, there was an option. Right? So, today the demand far outstrips the supply in this market at least. So, all our innovation started happening on the supply side. How do we increase the number of cars on the road? Right? As a leader in this industry, we are the ones who have to set the tone to how to increase supply, because nobody else will do it for us, right? So we said, why don't we explore the Nano? The Nano is about 20,000 or 30,000 rupees cheaper in terms of down payment. It is half the EMI of an Indica. So there will be a lot more people who will come and start buying Nanos for us. The other thought was, so this is the driver owner. So more number of people who are unemployed can come, buy this car. We will help them with the kind of deal that Tata Motors would give, or the financier will give. But they would have to buy the car themselves, right? So that is one. Second, on the demand side, will consumers start liking the Nano? Will they want to travel in a Nano, right? So we pitched it as something that is for short commute, right? So you don't have luggage, you don't want to go to the airport, you just want to go from point A to point B within the city. All of us use autos, all of us use cabs as well. So in India, there is no major segment which says, I will only use an Innova and I will not use anything else. Everybody uses everything. So a person who can travel in an auto would definitely travel in a Nano and make it cost effective, right? So these are the kind of innovations that that we have brought into the industry. Another thing is, on the app, we have something called Magic Trips. So if you go there and click on that, or just open our app and just shake the phone, what you will get a list of bookings that you might probably do. So based on your present location, based on the time at which you are accessing Magic Trips, it will predict what you might be booking for. So let's say you're in office, it's a Tuesday evening at 5 o'clock. It will show office to home at 5:30. That is what you usually book. But if it's a Friday night, Friday evening, it will show you office to MG Road, let's say, because you're probably going and meeting friends every Friday evening. So that's the kind of intelligence that we can start churning out, and all these are innovations. So how do we go and innovate? We try to solve a problem. So every time, whether it's the start of the company to any kind of innovation that we want to do, it is always a problem that has made us go ahead and use our creativity and innovate to solve that problem.
Sure. What are the few things you do for retaining your customers? Probably can we talk something on customer engagement or incentive to the customers, which I've been seeing very often.
Yeah. So we've done a lot of things. So right from 1 rupee rides. So our first ever campaign was book 3 times and get a movie voucher from Book My Show. From that kind of a thing to giving 1 rupee rides to our consumers. So we had an offer called App 50 going on. 50 rupees off on every app booking that was happening. To the latest short distance campaign that we did for 49, which is still live, 49 for 4 kilometers. So we used to be 200 for 10 kilometers, and what we saw was that consumers were using us for distances more than 10 kilometers, or only using us when there was an important meeting or a wedding to attend or going to the airport, but probably not using us when it was a more casual commute, to go meet friends or go and pick up your children from school. Those kind of places, they were still using auto. So when we spoke to the consumers, they basically said that your initial fare is 200 rupees. I don't think I want to pay 200 rupees for that, right? So that's where the idea came about to drop the barrier to entry for using a taxi. So from 200 for 10 kilometers, we dropped it down to 49 for 4 kilometers. And what has happened in the last 1 month of doing that, we've seen a lot of short distance commute that has started happening. People, when it's as cheap as an auto, you would, try to book a taxi before you go and step out to see whether you get an auto on the road. So, that's these are kind of things that we've done to retain customers. Also, when our whole system, our backend and the call center, every customer has an R number. R is repeat. So if you're a repeat 1, repeat 2, so we've also seen that if a customer books 5 times with us and he or she does not have an issue with us, there is a high probability of them becoming sticky, meaning they become a loyalist of Taxi for Sure. So we do a lot of things on the back end to make sure that every customer who comes and uses Taxi for Sure, for the first 5 times, there should be no problem whatsoever. Even if there is a problem, there is a fast resolution. That we do for all customers, but there is a special attention to people who are booking for the first 5 times, so that they become loyal. Once they become loyal, there are a lot of other programs that we run to make sure that they remain loyal with us. So these are some of the things that.
That's about customer loyalty. What about the employees' loyalty? What do you do to engage your employees and nurture your employees?
Yeah. So, there are lots. So, one of the things that we do is keep throwing parties. So everybody likes a good party. Actual terrace party is what we call it. So it's done on the terrace where we started. So that keeps happening. There's a lot of freedom and independence given to people, and there's a lot of mutual respect that is there in the company. So all of these are, things that make people want to work with a certain company, right? And there are, things that we do on every Tuesday, Wednesday, based on the city. It's called Fun Tuesdays. There are some activities. Whether it is, it could be a painting competition or, a dumb sheriff's thing going on. Then we have outings, movie outings, paintball outings, laser tag, various of these as well. So there's a lot happening all the time. And of course, the fundamental thing is of giving independence, freedom, and respect. You're there. We believe that everybody who joins Taxi for Sure is a person who wants to achieve something for themselves, prove something for themselves, and we respect that fact. And they are responsible for something. So the overall objective is stated very clearly, but how they go about doing it and how quickly they do it is based on their responsibility. Right? So there's not much micromanagement and all those things.
Being an entrepreneur, what do you think the risk associated with an entrepreneur? Your journey as per your observations?
Well, when I started off, so my parents weren't very for me, quitting my job and starting off. So it took quite some time. So without even the Taxi for Sure idea, I had gone and told them that I want to start up. So they had said that you can't start up. You're 29, you have to get married. If you don't have a job, you can't get married. So I said that that's not my goal, but it was their goal. So that was one. So actually, if you are 29 and unmarried, probably you run the chances of not getting married at the right time, right? So that's a risk, right? So, according to society and your parents. But I did eventually get married this year, February, so it's not that much of a risk. So, risks of being an entrepreneur, I don't see any risk of being an entrepreneur. You might lose some years of your life trying to solve something. So as long as you know what you're trying to solve, you would have invested some amount of your time. So all of us have only one thing that we can invest, without money, right? Time we can invest in certain places. I think if you invest your time in the wrong thing, then it is a risk. So if you're not clear about the problem that you're trying to solve, then investing your time, let's say it's 2 years or 3 years of your life, that you're going to invest in trying to solve a problem that does not exist, or a problem that people don't appreciate that needs to be solved at this moment, then that is a risk. Because you've lost 2-3 years of your life trying to do the wrong thing. Right? So I think having the entrepreneurial spirit is definitely required, but having it for the right reasons, solving the right problem, solving the right real world problem, I think is definitely necessary.
So we would like to know something on the funding, but before that, let me know what is the vision of TFS 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line?
So we are here to make commute reliable and convenient for everybody, and of course pocket friendly, right? So when a person wants to go from point A to point B in any city that across India, so I'll tell you our growth, right? In June of this year, it's as good as owning your car, or even cheaper, and you can actually save time. You can sit in the back seat, have a nap for an hour. You could sit in the back seat and call a few friends whom you haven't spoken to for a long time. Call your parents, get some work done. You want to think of starting up on your own. That is the time when you actually get alone time, right? Otherwise, at work you have your boss, and at home you have all your family. So cab is probably the only place where you get some alone time to think whatever you want to, right? So I think that's what we are here for, and it would be awesome if we could actually stop people from buying cars and start using taxis. It's better for the environment. One car is used by 20 people in a day versus 20 people getting their own cars onto the road, right? So and for all the reasons that I've already mentioned, it's better for the individual also to be using taxis rather than owning their own car.
So let's talk about funding. What do you think some do's and don'ts when it comes to the funding? So how do you want us to make sure that we get funding for any project? Because we have a nice lot of funding as of
So I think it comes back to the point that I made on solving the right problem. So if you're solving the right problem, you will get enough and more people to pay for your service or product, whatever you are developing. And if you have enough and more users paying for the product and service, there will be enough and more investors who are looking to fund that. Because at the end of it, any investor wants to multiply the money that they put in it. And that won't happen just because there's an idea. The idea should be solving problems of millions of people, and then there is a lot of value in it. So to get funding, I think as long as you're solving the right problem and adding value to people, for which they will pay a certain amount of money, funding will happen.
So what has been the greatest satisfying point as an entrepreneur?
So as I said, we work with operators, right? And there is this one operator in Delhi. He was our first operator. He was actually a Meru cab driver who came to us and said, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be an operator with you. So, in Hyderabad, so we invited him for the Hyderabad launch. And when I was talking to him in Hyderabad, he said, I am buying a house. Okay. So, a guy who would have never dreamt of buying a house because of us is saying that he's buying a small house. It wasn't like, a very big one, but a guy who would have never thought of buying a house in his lifetime and probably would have paid rent or lived in his ancestral property for the rest of his life. Now coming and saying that because of the kind of earnings that you are giving, I'm actually investing that into a house and I'll have a house. And he also involves his son into the business. So he's told his son that you don't have to worry about anything. You just have to work with Taxi Basher. I'll work for Taxi Basher for the rest of my life. You take it. So it's becoming a family business. So these are things that really make it all worthwhile, right? There have been times when I was once out at 3 a.m. and talking to a friend who had come from Delhi on the road here in Sajapur Road, and the car stopped. And I thought that car was trying to ask for directions, so went there and asked him what happened. So he said, so he recognized and said, "Aren't you Aprameya?" So I said, "Yes." So he said, "Thanks." I said, "For what?" So, no, I used to be in a lot of trouble. I had a lot of loans, but now I've been able to clear all of them, and I'm earning well now. So these are all small things that make it all worthwhile for you. So for me and Raghu to put more than 24 hours in the 24 hours, these are the things that actually motivate us to do better.
So well, BFS has set an example, but which are the other companies or industries you admire most? If you can ask.
So I admire all first generation entrepreneurs because they had nothing to go, as in they had no support, and they've whatever they've done, they've made it on their own, right? So it's not the kind of business or anything like that, but all the first generation successful entrepreneurs, I think they would have gone through a lot to make whatever they've done happen. So I would say that is one. But in terms of, I just have a soft corner for B2C businesses because they, you can actually see what is happening. So as an electronics engineer back in engineering college, when I was studying about transistors, all those things, the one connect that I would miss is, how is this going to help me in life? All this is already done and over, right? So, can't we really study something that will actually help us in life? Those were the kind of questions in my head. So B2C businesses actually, solve something that we can see, right? A restaurant which makes masala dosa like nobody else has a proposition, right? Which you can actually taste, feel, and know why this guy is so famous. So I think, first generation entrepreneurs and any B2C business that's really, grown because of word of mouth, because people love it so much. I think those are the kind of businesses.
So wanted to know if mentors play very important role in making any startup successful. And do you have any mentors?
So, frankly speaking, we didn't have any particular mentor as such. At the end of it, everybody has 24 hours in a day. I would want a mentor who's always achieved something in life and who's already been there, done that. But that person won't have the time or the inclination to put in the right amount of 100% or more effort to say all the right things and give all the right advice. Right? So, as much as you can, listen to people, even now when you're listening to me, these are all not the right things to do. It depends on your context of what you're doing and when you're doing. So I think mentors, of course, to share, can you just think of everything and do everything yourself? I don't think so. But to have sounding boards, to know whether you're doing the right things, wrong things, or just to, get new thoughts from people, I think it's good to keep talking to people who had the experience. But, I would suggest using mentors as sounding boards rather than going to them and really listening to them as to, if you have a problem, you can't just ask them for a solution. They won't have an answer. So there will be a lot of things in the background that you won't even know you have to share to make the decision contextual for them, right? So you need to believe in yourself and take the right points from whatever discussions you are having. But at the end of it, you're the boss. It's your life. You need to make those calls. So I think having mentors is not that important. If you do stumble upon somebody whom you can relate to and can get that kind of a time, energy out of them, I think you should definitely use them as sounding boards. But it's not the end of it all.
Sure. Before we actually take up some questions from audience, some do's and don'ts to make any startup successful. I'm sure we have spoken about that throughout this speech, but some few important points which makes it really effective.
So do's and don'ts. So I would say you definitely have to believe. So I'll go back to the same point. The right problem. If you don't have the right problem to solve, that will solve a real world problem. I don't think you have the right startup idea. Right? If you say that I'm going to solve this and you have lots of your friends excited about it, then you have the right startup idea. So, spend your time on the right things. Right? Once you've found that, believe in yourself and give it all that you have got, because you have the right idea and the right market that you're going after. So these are a couple of things. So be an entrepreneur, find creative solutions for every problem that you encounter while trying to solve that real world problem.
Sure. Can we have some questions from audience?
I'm Ankit. I work in data and devices team in Bharti Airtel. So I have two questions for you. One is, you said you'll be present in 56 cities by the end of March, right? If you benchmark yourself against Uber, which is presently present in 250 cities in 51 countries and has raised a fresh round of $1.2 billion just day before yesterday. So what are your aspirations in terms of going global, right? Where would you like to be at the end of, say, the next 2 years? And the second question that I have is, you spoke about that you work a lot with the operators, right? Not with individual taxi drivers. So what is stopping you from getting into intercity travel? Everyone in this industry is focused in intracity travel, whereas there is a huge market in intercity travel as well, and you are well positioned to solve that one. So what is stopping you, or do you have any plans to get into this market basically?
So first question, international plan, yes, we do have it. The ideology is, India is probably one of the toughest markets to crack in the taxi aggregation business. For an international player to come and crack this is going to be challenging. That we're already seeing. It has a lot of its own challenges to scale, right? So we want to crack whatever is there in the Indian market to the fullest extent, and then look at international. But that does not mean it's too far away. 56 cities is a good potential, first set potential of India. Once we hit that, Southeast Asia, Middle East Asia is what we're looking at.
One question on the back.
And second question. Yeah, what is the second question?
The second question was that you said that you work with operators, right? Not with individual taxis. Right? So as a customer, if I have to book a cab to say a Mysore,
Intercity. Okay.
Yeah, intercity market.
So the intercity market, so this is a supply constrained market, right? What we are trying to do is with a high frequency intracity travel. So a person, any consumer will use an intracity travel much more than what they use as a intercity travel. So you might take a cab to go to Mysore once in 6 months or once in a year. But you will remember Taxi For Sure because you use Taxi For Sure to go to office every day. Right? So in the 3 years that we've spent and the next 1 or 2 years, we want to become the name associated, ingrained in the minds of every consumer in every city that we operate in. And then leverage it, and that comes to my second point of supply constraint, right? So we are, innovating, like the Nano, like various other things that we will do. We are innovating on the kind of things that we can do to increase supply in the city. And once that happens, there will be enough supply for the intercity and intracity, and we will leverage the brand that is created with intracity to get into intercity.
Hello, Abramya. I am a loyal customer of Taxi For Sure.
Great.
My number might be saved as R6 in your account. R6, repeat 6.
Okay, 6.
So, cities like Bangalore, where the auto problem is very severe, your model will work fantastic. But what about the Mumbai scenario, where the
around 800-900 transactions a day, which took us quite some time in Bangalore and a longer than elsewhere. But what we've seen is that Mumbai has, although it has a lot of cabs, the demand is still far higher than what the cabs are, right? And during peak times, near Nariman Point and all, you won't get cabs during office going and coming times. So these are all problems that are existing in the market. And there, have you lived in Mumbai? Have you lived there?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, there is still a lot of problem in getting cabs. So, from whatever we've seen, we've been able to only service about 20% of the requests that we've gotten so far, and we're already growing faster than any other city that we've grown in. So, a market like Mumbai, since the cab hailing behavior is already there, it is actually helping us a lot more.
We you face any attrition problem with so many cab operators like Uber, Ola, and Taxi for sure, and you don't own these cabs, right? So the drivers, shifting from one business owner to some other. So do you face that problem, or how do you solve it if you face it?
So there are loyalists. There are people who task. They will probably work with multiple people. What we try and do is, there are three things that we see that every driver operator wants. One is revenue, second is respect, and third is whenever they have a problem, response. So as long as you keep giving these three things, there is nothing that a driver wants apart from this. So give them enough money every day and keep them busy throughout the day without really irritating them in any way. So he doesn't have time to go work for multiple people, right? So let's say he's earning 3,000, 4,000 rupees a day with you, and you've kept him busy throughout the day whenever he wanted to work, right? So there is no reason as to why he would want to work with anybody else.
But there's no formal thing that binds a driver to the operator.
Well, we can sign a contract, but that is as good as you can do it. How many drivers will you take to court, right?
You entered into Chennai market, right? And if you notice, Chennai already has a lot of fancy numbers that they could call, and Bharati call taxi, fast track, and all that. What was the challenge you faced there? And that's one question. Another question is, Taxi for sure was the front runner, and I would say the pioneer. But then Ola cabs came in suddenly, and we scaled up very quickly. How did you feel that? Were you, jittered by it, or how did you take that? And then the Uber thing that came in. So what's your current, differentiation factor?
So one, the Chennai market has been extremely responsive to us. So fast track, so all of them are already trying. So we are the only ones working with operators. So the first question and third question together. We are the only one working with operators amongst the aggregators, and we are actually talking to Fast Track to get on the Taxi for Sure platform. So they have some 4,000 odd cars in Chennai. So let's say tomorrow we crack that deal and Fast Track comes onto the platform. So suddenly there's a huge boost, in terms of the supply that is there, which nobody else can do, because they all have to take driver by driver from Fast Track or whoever else. But here we are telling Fast Track, you get onto the platform and we will help you retain your drivers. Right? So that's the kind.
But what if they have an online presence? Will that be a mark?
I don't think so. So all the local players, Fast Track is big enough, but they don't use any technology even now. Whether it's a call center, the dispatch is still working on every 50 cars. There is one dispatcher. They call, they remember where they are. That's how they work. So for them to scale beyond this is going to be difficult. For them to scale across cities will be difficult. And here's an opportunity with Taxi for Sure to scale across cities, increase their revenue, get access to technology, and get access to the huge amount of demand that we've generated in each of the markets already.
What are scale 50 and digital?
No, it doesn't.
Hello sir, I'm a student here at NMIMS Bangalore. My name is Tanmay. Now talking retrospectively, you said it took you 6 months to get the website up and running. So while you were at it, I want to know more about the marketing efforts you took. I mean, how difficult it actually was to get the first customer, and if any difficulties you faced there.
First customer, so initially we posted on Facebook, asked a few friends to go and post it on their intranet, office intranet, right? So that's how we started off. So it was difficult, it wasn't easy. But as So if you keep giving good service, word of mouth really helps, right? And once we got funded, then it got a little easier because we could go on radio, we could go and do Google ads, we could do several other things. Now we're doing hoardings. Our TV ad is out. So if you guys do watch TV, you probably see us on TV. So you know, it gets better and better. But initially, I think, you know, giving a good service, making sure that you're again solving the right problem, and you know, making that, you know, go viral, word of mouth is really important.
Good morning, sir. I wanted to ask that you mentioned something about your loyalty programs for your regular customers that you have. I wanted to ask if you have something like some analytical frameworks or your in-house team which goes into analytics in the same thing. So have you done outsourcer kind of work, or are you still not doing it?
So we have a very strong analytics team in-house. So one thing is when you're creating a marketplace where you don't own the cars, you don't own the customers, you don't own anything, right? So you should own the team at least. So you can't outsource the call center, you can't outsource anything that you do otherwise. You know, we do have a very strong analytics team running every kind of you know, data that is there in the system to make us reach out to the right people at the right time to make them book more and more. Well, there is no such regulation that Nano can't be used as taxi. No, Tata knows that it has a permission for it. We wouldn't make such a fundamental mistake. No, there's no.
Hi. So, with all the aggregators and new genie coming in market, the fare war has really heated up. I believe that every ride, customer has to shell out some money and the aggregator has to pay some money to the driver. How long this kind of model is sustainable? Probably Ola Auto and the Nano Taxi from your end could be an answer, but I don't know. How long can the operators sustain, the aggregators sustain this kind of model?
So see, you know, no matter which market you get into and you're solving a problem, you can either wait for the market to keep growing. So if we wait for that, then probably the problem will be solved very slowly across the next 3 years. Because if you want, you know, 1 lakh customers using Taxi for Sure every day in Bangalore, if we don't invest the amount of money that we do right now, it will happen after 2 years. But if we do invest the kind of money, so running operations for 2 years will also cost some amount of money, right? But if we, you know, invest half of that money upfront now and reach that goal of solving the commute problems of 1 lakh customers every day in the next 3 months, right? We become a much more you know, sought after company by the consumers, right? So it's a conscious call of accelerating the usage of taxis by citizens and consumers of each city.
But these attractive fares could act as a catalyst, but once all the subsidy, all the reduced fare is removed, do you really think that customer will still remain hooked on with the taxis, or will they move to an auto?
So let's play out a scenario where for the next 1 year we'll keep doing this. Okay, not that I'm saying we're doing it, but let's say we do it. All of you plus me will get so addicted to, you know, using the app to call a taxi. Today you pay 100 rupees for it. Okay, tomorrow I'll ask you to pay 150 rupees for it. You will still be okay. But you would have gotten used to the convenience. You don't want to go on the road anymore to hail an auto.
Any plans of getting into auto sector?
So we are here to solve the commute problem. So whether it is introduction of nano or any other kind of commute will happen so that we reduce the number of times we say no to a customer.
You have very good HR policies. Do you have any plans to do anything for your driver community also, so that our travel becomes more safer and secure? That's the first question. Next one is, do you have any upselling plans, like within the taxi when I'm spending 1 hour? Do you have plans to sell any ready-to-eat snacks or tea or coffee? Again, do you have any plans for diversification? Because you want to grow the community. And the third one is,
you have to repeat all the questions.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll ask my third question later. So the first one is commitment to the drivers community.
So we do a lot of things for the drivers, right? From helping them financing their cars, getting them good deals from Tata, Toyota, Mahindra, all these guys. Plus a lot of small programs that we run with them. Let's say for the week, if there's a star performer, getting a lot of good feedback from consumers. There have been contests where they can win refrigerators, washing machines, LED TVs. All these things keep happening. Plus, every quarter we do a medical checkup camp where the whole network is told that in this place there are people, there are doctors who will check your eyesight, your blood pressure, your all the normal things, and then if there's any major problem, they will probably tell you to go and see a doctor, right? So those kind of things we keep doing. So these are some of the loyalty programs. What's your second question?
Upselling plans within the taxi and diversification.
So we've already done that to a certain extent, right? Whether it is the Baskin Robbins type that we had, Book My Show type we had, the other day Coke was there in our office saying that we'll keep a small ice box in your car. So there's already a lot of interest for other people. So let's say we keep just an LED, that's an advertising revenue for us. We have tied up with Flipkart at times to give special discounts to our customers. So various things like that keep happening.
The third one is, carpooling is a buzzword now. Do you have any plans to include carpooling in metro cities during the peak time so that more customers come onto your platform?
So that is something that we are still experimenting with. There's a lot of complexity in it. One is the whole psychological psyche of us not wanting to share, the ride with somebody else. And the rides are so cheap that you don't really have to share anymore. So these are things that we're exploring, but it's something that we're not looking to introduce right away.
How does your algorithm work? You track the car that the driver feels like, at which point he uses, so you optimize the travel.
Yes. From his home back to home, it is all optimized. If he runs 200 kilometers in a day, we try to maximize the number of kilometers with which he has a customer.
So Tipsy knows already?
No, it's all live.
Is there any possibility or any opportunity where you can maybe link up with the corporates? Like let's say these companies which have odd shifts, so we can actually replace those taxis with taxi insurance. So is there any scope you might maybe move into that?
So our approach is to, become such a big retail brand that the corporates will use us anyways. So again, demand far outstrips the supply today. So we don't see a reason why we should go and tie up. So the same customer can take out the app and book right then.
Since you're working with operators rather than drivers, people are taking some hit on your margin. If possible, they will use a
No, it's known. So we take about 15% from the driver, 5% goes to the operator, 10% comes to us. And that hit is long term. It is something that we are saying is beneficial.
So no plans to bring drivers on board with that.
You can't do both. So operators will then view you as competition. You can't do both.
I recently relocated to Bangalore. One of the reasons I have not bought a car is because of the availability of these types. One of the challenges I face since I don't know Kannada is so many drivers are not very comfortable in English or Hindi. So how do you plan for this?
Yeah, so we're planning to add a feature called Talk to Your Driver in our app. It will translate everything you want to say into Kannada. That was just something that I made up just But yeah, that's one of the challenges that we're facing. But we want to solve it through technology as much as possible, right? Because for the driver who's uneducated, for him to learn a new language like English will take some time. He can read, he can probably get to an address, but he cannot on the phone listen to what you're trying to say and comprehend. So getting the exact location from wherever you're requesting the car from and translating it to him is something that we keep working on. So I know it's a challenge. Cab reaching is one of the most anxious moments that we've seen in a consumer survey. So we'll keep working on it. And that's another reason why international companies like Uber will find it difficult in developing markets where English is not the first choice of communication for drivers.
So one question from you.
One of the things like this question like we had asked about, still there are people like going from ZX types, go outside the door, call up the local auto driver, load the hip for so many reasons, or call up the loan driver rather than using a taxi on the street. Still that market segment is addressed not addressed or not able to be even cracked, because it again comes to the next generation, isn't it? So that driver to that son's driver, again, is that convenience or that interaction, that level that they have at that place. So how do you try to address this kind of scenarios?
So you are saying you have an access to a local driver?
Yeah, local driver or the next door guy whom I know very fast about it.
So let's say I get that guy onto Taxi Fisher platform. I'll just get the driver you're talking about into Taxi Fisher, and I make sure he's always busy with business, and every time you call him, he's at the airport, he's somewhere else, he never comes to you. What will you do?
Yeah, true to that. But the convenience is the reach is more near.
Correct.
Yeah.
But let's say that is me. You call me up. I say, no sir, I can't come.
Yeah.
Why can't you come? No sir, I'm in Majestic. I can't come. It is 12 kilometers away. I can't come. Shall I send a friend? He'll say yes once. That friend will never turn up. So there are, I'm saying that every driver in the city will be on the Taxi Fisher platform. And that is how we're going to address the fact that, the consumer will never have access to that guy. Not that you would like it, but that's what we would probably be able to do.
My question is like, where do you put most of the marketing? Online, offline, or media? Another question is, how many VCs you have?
Whether he works, doesn't work, whatever it is, he has to pay 1,000. So those kind of models make people work 24 hours. Our kind of models haven't really made people work so hard. As in, when you're sleepy, you sleep. As in, they don't drive. Because there's no clock ticking saying, if you don't drive, you will have to pay anyways. This is only when you earn when you will have to pay a commission. So our model does address that. So some of your experiences might be actually radio taxi companies. But our drivers go home, sleep, then come out. So that's our approach.
So the drivers will do at any time, there's at one point in time they will get the next pickups and they do some in between jugglery, they will take somebody else. Does that happen? Has it happened?
You don't give them time. That's the case. You just have to keep giving them business one after the other and they won't have time to think about anything.
I have two questions for you. First is the place where I live in Whitefield. Most of the time my taxi is cancelled. Prior 1 hour, 2 hours.
You live in the wrong place.
Unfortunately, yes. Because most of the time I do not get taxi for you at that place. So do you have any plans if a customer got cancelled? So any benefit to him कि अगली बार वो आपके पास आके use करे? Even though I got my taxi cancelled this time, I should be motivated to use taxi for the next time.
So in each of the cities that we operate in, there are peak zones and non-peak zones, peak times and non-peak times. Whitefield is an extra super peak zone for us. Right? No matter which car goes there, it gets consumed. So the only way to handle that is by introducing surge pricing. So I say, I will give you a taxi to make more taxis available there. They should be convinced that they will earn more if they go there. So if that has to happen, then let's say I charge double for Whitefield. You probably will pay. At that moment you need it so badly that you will pay. So those are certain things that we are exploring but haven't yet introduced. So if there is a super big zone, you'd rather have a taxi than being told, no, I don't have a taxi. Right? And it is not just the problem of taxi for sure, it will be the problem with every taxi player in that city that, Whitefield is a place where cabs are not available. So, these are some certain solutions that we're looking at that will probably increase the number of taxis that is available there.
And my second question is on payments. I am also being in mobile payment solutions. So we always face this problem that driver don't have exact money to return you, or you don't have exact money because you can't pay with the card in a taxi. And most of the time people face this kind of problem, even if it is an auto, if it is a taxi, or if it is a bus. So what is your plan for that?
We already have a mobile wallet. So you just have to put in money in that and then travel cash.
So it is an online wallet or offline wallet?
App.
Look, if I am in a cab right now and I don't have internet access, how I will pay with my wallet?
You preload it. Okay. So let's say you preload it with 1,000 rupees. Your taxi trip is 100 rupees. 100 will be deducted from 1,000.
It is auto deducted.
This is just Ola money.
Yeah, it's a wallet.
And how do you deal with?
Yeah.
How do you deal with unforeseen, unfavorable situations? For example, whatever you tell me last night, the Uber that case. Is the aggregator also held responsible for such kind of things? Or it's big because these guys are not on your payrolls.
These guys are?
Not on your payrolls, not on aggregators' payrolls.
They are partners. So we take all precautions. We have all the details of every driver that works with us. We have their photograph, we have their address, we have their driving license copy, we have their insurance copy, we have their cab badge number. All these things are done. They are trained. They are told how to behave. There is an active driver rating system that is there. All of this is in place as a process and a system, right? And what we try and do is, make sure that we get the right kind of drivers. Our model as such, since we work with operators, kind of helps us do that. Because each operator will only onboard drivers that he knows or his friends know. He will not want to work with somebody who he doesn't know at all, right? So each of these operators, let's say, has 50 drivers. Those 50 drivers he will know in person as to who that guy is, what he is doing and all those things. Whereas in a direct driver model, if you're working with 10,000 drivers, it is very difficult for the company to know each of those 10,000 drivers in person. So our model of working with operators helps us get the right kind of networks in place, because he will lose space in society. So he is part of a 50-member group where if he misbehaves with anybody, that group will get to know. And he is probably not just going to be thrown out of Taxi for Sure, but he'll be thrown out of all his society as well, right? So there's a lot more at stake. Next question.
What is the technical challenge you face whenever you start up your company, right? So the background infrastructure, whatever you said, we start with an Excel sheet. So when the consumers are going to be a large enough, so how are you going to tackle that?
So, that's just to start with. But after that, you set up your whole infrastructure. Right now, whatever that Excel sheet was is not an Excel sheet right now. It's a full-blown system, that has been developed.
So that's it's a kind of infrastructure setup. What you have either your public or
we have a whole team working on it. We have an engineering team which develops our front end, back end, everything. Right. So everything that you experience is developed by the engineering team. So we have a CTO who joined from Yahoo, who leads that team to make sure that everything is.